troubles, I will keep your days gone by. Your days gone by. That's the first one.
Yeah.
That was the first one we wrote.
People often ask us, how we start things and whether it's music or lyric first, and we do either. So for Lay Down Your Head, there's a moment in the story where Monty falls asleep against her shoulder, and Jeanine really loved that moment. So she wrote this and sang it into my answering machine, and then we went back and forth on the lyrics for a while.
And that's the date. That's how long ago we wrote it.
Right.
It's into the answering machine.
Right, yes, that dates us. And but there was a moment early on in the story that spoke to me right away where she's absolutely killer sarcastic at this guy who says, "Are you going someplace, Violet?" And she sings, "Is this a suitcase? Is it mine? Am I waiting by the candy stand beneath the Greyhound station sign? Have I got a ticket in my hand? Stupid. The people of Spruce Pine are stupid." So that's the moment that I worked in a chocolate store where I had to dip strawberries in chocolate, and people would always come in the store and say, "Is that a strawberry you're dipping in chocolate?" And so that sarcastic response, I just knew it in my bones, even though I couldn't do it to the customers. It was like, that's right at the front of my head.
That's hilarious. In the early 80s, the 1880s that is, I saw a film on Showtime, and I remember thinking, oh, that's such an interesting story. And I was music directing and doing arrangements, and I thought if I were a composer, that's the story that I would start with. I looked up with my business partner at the time the short story that was Doris Betts' The Ugliest Pilgrim. And through, we both read it, we realized that it was such a rich material and a really interesting character, and we flew down to meet Doris, who reluctantly and very politely gave us the rights against her better judgment, and then we sort of started on our way.
The story is a very strong first-person story. You read the story, I don't know what it is, 12 pages, and you have a very solid idea who Violet is. She's an unusual character. She has a very strong purpose. Characters in stories anyway, always they're taking metaphorical journeys. But this one was interesting because it's actually a literal journey.
Yeah.
And the fact that she traveled across the country suggested right away a musical score that could move through different styles. It starts in North Carolina, where folk music was and is strong. It travels through Nashville with country music. It travels through Memphis with R&B and blues, and lands in a gospel singing church. Mm-hmm. So that aspect of it was an exciting sort of door. I think I may be on my way. We wrote that thing that came out of that little sarcastic intro. That has the vestiges of the first person story. That's really her talking about the people that she's seeing, and the people that she's seeing don't interact with her very much. So after writing that, we thought, how can we get common purpose to the group of people? And Susan Schulman, our director, said, I want everybody to come on stage now so that we see everybody that's going to be on this journey with us. So we're trying to think of where do you start with a group of people?
The idea that, everybody's on a journey and life is a bus ride. When everybody starts, remember we were talking about the sounds of that the groove in the road makes, which is this. So that's the gung-gung when the tires get into a groove, and then they just hum. They're all humming, and you can see that everybody's in their own space before they take a journey, and then they all sing, before another sunrise wakes me, before another night is gone, I'll find out how this highway takes me, I've got to travel on. And then everybody joins in, and they realize that they're not hearing each other. They're all in their space, and what joins them together is the journey that
is
they're
the
taking.
thought of where they're going and what's. And I remember that hum when you were on that flight, you noticed you were sort of humming as you were waiting for things to happen, and she noticed everybody else is, everybody's on the flight, nobody started talking to their neighbors, even the extroverts haven't started yet, and everybody's kind of sitting there self-contained, and then they broaden out as the journey begins, and maybe they start talking to the person next to them. But that humming thing, I remember, and that idea of on my way, like, that is the common purpose. We're all on our way to whatever it is. And whatever it is different for everybody. But that's...
Yeah, I think that's true. It's like when you take a trip and you're on, and you become a collective, just like the audience. It's the subway. You're a group of people. You get into a car. So the thing that brings you together and sort of hermetically seals you is that subway. And if anything were to happen, like all of those movies all the disaster movies, which I loved when that was the 70s, one disaster, Towering Inferno and the Poseidon Adventure, and you realize, like, you look at your neighbor, you think, I hope you have like a fire extinguisher hidden in your long skirt, ma'am.
You're going to need some life skills.
Anyway, so you get on
common cause.
So you're
Shared
in
experience.
that subway car, and then it seals, you think, these are my passengers, these are the people I'm traveling with, and it's sort of like, what life is all about too. Who am I making my decisions to go on the journey with? And you start out alone, and then you join, and then at the end of your life, you sort of do the same thing. You exit alone, but in between, you go on this big bus ride of sorts. And I think we fell in love with that idea. And for her, she made a big decision to go on this journey. It wasn't that someone came and picked her up. She's a really interesting female character who says, something's happened to me. It's not right, and I'm going to go get it fixed.
There's a lot of
myself.
agency to it,
Yes,
rather than
that's
passivity.
Yes, the word.
For another sunrise wakes me, if for another night it's gone, I'll find out where this highway takes me. I got to travel on. I left my troubles all behind me, back there where I climbed on board. Jordan River's where you'll find me. It's wide but not too wide to ford. And as I'm going along, I carry with me promises that can't go wrong as I travel on.
So she meets two soldiers.
She meets two soldiers.
The first one she meets is Flick.
He's on the bus.
He's on the bus when she gets on.
They sort of see each other.
Right.
Before they talk to each other, and then at a rest stop they start interacting somewhat. Somebody says something really racist to him, and she defends him, and that's how they sort of kick off. Let It Sing, it starts with a martial, one of the marching songs, which is something my father talked about in the 50s with, he had a black sergeant, a drill sergeant, that made the long marches feel short and contained because everything was done to a rhythm. So instead of feeling like you were working all day, you felt like you were kind of moving in it. And then we shifted out of that into a kind of gospel-y song. And I think the first time we played it with each other, we're like, I don't know. Yeah, let's teach it to Michael.
Right.
We taught it to Michael McElroy just to see. Yeah. And then he sang it, right? And it was...
He sang it, and I remember I wrote it, and he was like, can you bring that up like an octave? Because I had written it really low, and I kept going up and up and up. And because he was like, it should be high, it should be celebratory. And it was just, it was, I think, an example of when you work with actors in the very beginning of the musical, that they can really have a great effect on what it is that you're doing. The idea that there is a black soldier that has, is literally above in terms of his station, his rank of the white soldier, but the white soldier, as the world sees him, is this. But in the army, they're this. And that's another kind of tension that they're working out. And there's this language that Brian gave Flick about, well, what am I going to do? I'm a two-rocker sergeant, but back home, what, a cigarette factory? And you realize, what he has.
Oh boy, ain't that right? And then it gets a little looser.
Got some years ahead to go, you'll go free if tickets. Oh boy, you got left, right. Oh boy, ain't that right?
Two kinds of people in this world. Some some say no. Time to say what side you're on. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Say yes and your adventure start. Not always as expected. Say no, you stay apart, but you stay protected. You got to give yourself a reason to rejoice.
Counts for
Thank you.
everything, now every living thing. Soul has got a voice. You got to give it room and let it sing. You know, Violet's just listening to this person who turns out is really her miracle. She's on the road to find a miracle, but what she doesn't understand is that man singing next to her is going to be it. So the other soldier is interesting because I think he's that kind of man who, we've had so many discussions that people aren't one thing. I feel like what we've tried to do in this is make a person like Monty more complicated than just like, oh, the sort of that man.
Just the rooster.
Yeah, right, exactly. The rooster, like the pretty boy, and Brian gave him this language about his mother that you realize like, oh, pretty people have something that's expected of them too. So how is he telling Violet's story? Well, impossibly beautiful people, you know, the Brad Pitts, the Angelina Jolies of the world. I think people expect something from them, and they perhaps get an easier ride because they have not as much friction, but then how does that work on the other side against them? And so we spent a lot of time discussing someone like him and what he brings to Violet and how she disorders him. And last time I came to Memphis, all it took
was 2 beers. Had a girl on her back, her feet up by my ears. I like the kind of girlfriend I have to step in a bar, not to make of the promises barroom promises are. A barbecue, a couple of shots, nobody asking, no one starts.
someone who don't
Give a damn. That's what I come to Memphis for. That's what I want and nothing more. Here I am, the open door.
So it has that, it's like a halftime shuffle feel, and you know, like, again, with agency, he wants something, he hungers for something as opposed to, you know, which I think it's a really great song, but it lays back, you know, it's a declaration, you're different, as opposed to, this is doing something to me here, like something is not my expectations, which is more like that. So it broke up the rhythm. Something happened with this production that I feel so comfortable and at home, because we wrote it so many years ago, but then I think that we kept what we both loved and then went back as older people, as parents, as opposed to, you know, I was pregnant when we did that, and Brian and his wife had just had a baby, and so we were just starting out with all of those, and then we came back as parents of the show as well, and so we could come back a little bit more like scientists and say, well, this part right here, this is always kind of, I've always wondered about that, and time and age, and come back, and now I feel like there's not a moment that goes by in this version that I don't think, yeah, I get that, I understand that, I'll own that.
When you have those nostalgic moments in your life and you look back on I don't know, a photo album or a yearbook, and this piece has become that, it's become a palimpsest or an album, because when I'm watching it in a relaxed manner, like I don't need to fix something or be on, you know, watch something to take notes about something, you know, I hear things all the way through it that came from the people that did it at the O'Neill, and other things that came from playwrights and things that we wrote just now for these people that are doing it. So you sort of like get little bits and pieces of all these, you know, 50 different actors that have been involved in it over time, and you just remember all that stuff, and it becomes
Yeah, it's like a living museum.
Yeah.
For me, this piece has always been, you know, those terrible things we do with our kids, those little puzzles where you're just like put that one in there, and you're like, put it in the apple, put it in the apple.
Oh, the
and they're like,
shape sorters.
you
Yeah.
mean right next to it? And you just want, when you're a parent, you want to lose your mind. It's like, oh my God, that's a goddamn apple shape. It's an
Can't
apple.
you see?
Can't you see it? I know you're 6 months old, but come on. But I just feel like with Violet, it was one of those puzzle pieces that wasn't quite in its groove. We didn't plan for this. You know, Brian and I just want to do it. We did it at City Center to just do it for a night. And when Sutton started, I thought, oh. And I remember saying to Brian, is it okay that Sutton does this? I don't know if it's I don't think it's the right part for her. But it will be a night, it will be really great. And then look, you know, so I just feel like you never know when solutions are gonna come. And it also, it just, this show has always been nagging at me. And I think it nagged at me when I first saw that film on Showtime, and then it was nagging at me when I started to write. It was a thing I wanted to write. And then I think for us as a team, it was nagging, and now I feel like that is, oh, it just found that puzzle got part of, that piece got put in its groove, and I feel so happy about that, like so unbelievably happy.
What you should bet, it's a good bet, but I win.
Some say
Things happen by design, by demand, decree, or law. I say, things fall in line, by the luck of the draw.
Queen, straight, flush, by the luck of the draw. Baby, that's a royal flush.
By the luck of the draw.
Is that good?